Well, hello. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Monkey Mind Relaxation Chatter about the Chatter. I think today is going to be a phenomenal show. I'm extremely excited to be able to bring on the guest that we have today. Not just yet, so hold yourselves. Try and contain your excitement if you can. And as always, as we are live, you are more than welcome to write in any questions, comment on the show, because once we do get our guest in, and it's a fascinating guest, I'm going to be honest, because of the size of the guest that we have today, I wanted to make sure that we did some touch points on the conversations that we're going to be talking about today. So, the name of the show today is called Mental Illness is Not Mental Health. There is a difference. Now, when we're talking about that, and especially when it comes to the chatter about the chatter and the conversations that we have, and I touched on this previous to the show with my guest just to make sure that there was clarification there as well. And Sina, I know that you're running in the background as well. Sina, just let me know if she's in the green room, or let me see her in the green room. So we're going to talk about the conversations that we have. So the conversations that we have with ourselves. And I come from a place of monkey mind. I thought I was going round the bend with the conversations that I was having. And that's what I found out, that was my monkey mind. It made all the sense to me. I was a chronic overthinker. That's literally the challenge that I had, is I was a chronic overthinker. And once you're a chronic overthinker, I don't know if that's where you are in life, the conversations that you start having with yourself silently can make you or break you. They broke me. They gave me that emotional breakdown that I had, that mental breakdown that I had 10 years ago, which is why I started to invest in myself and started going on this journey of absolute self-help, meditation, creating monkey mind relaxation. And I've always had this affinity to be able to say, right, I'm going to, help others with overthinking and the other challenges that we can have in life. Because if you're not aware of how the mind works and how your monkey mind can make you react, as I wasn't, and I mean that sincerely, as I wasn't many, many, many years ago, I'll be honest with you, I thought I was going into a mental illness. That's how scary it was, and that's how those conversations started. Once I started looking into books and thinking, oh, that's what it is. Now I know what it is. Now I can start working with it. I can start getting past it. That's what started creating the life that I have now, where I know I'm in charge of my thoughts. And a lot of people don't understand that they're actually in charge of their thoughts. And that's sometimes, for a lot of people, the difference between mental illness and mental health. So that is what we're going to be talking about in today's show once my guest comes in. But I wanted to talk to everybody about the power of linguistics. Actually, I'll be honest with you, we've been talking so much in the show, and I know we're only a few minutes in, I've probably not even introduced myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's Cuddy Cudworth from Monkey Mind Relaxation. I am a mind management coach, and I help people with their mind management, mindset, and their mental health. And I am the host of Monkey Mind Relaxation Chatter about the Chatter. The strangest thing is, today, I'm feeling... And I'm not always a big fan of feelings, because I'm like, sometimes when I say I don't feel something, doesn't mean to say that it's not right. So, there we go. I'm looking for the private chat. I'm thinking, am I on my own today? That's all I needed to know. See that? I felt like I was fluffing for a while. That's fantastic. Now I can do the show because I know that they're there. Perfect. So, we're going to talk about the conversations that we have with ourselves and the repetition of how we can actually linguistically keep reaffirming something that we're not. Imagine that, and I love that word, imagine that, but imagine that, actually reaffirming something that we're not, and reaffirming a label that we have, starts making us believe things. Now, in a mental health way, that's what starts creating our anxiety. And if you are the kind of person that starts, well, I'm just a calamity, anxious mess, you keep repeating that, you start believing our own hype, our own meaning. And we start repeating the patterns and the behaviors that we have that create who we are. And when I'm working with my clients, when I'm working with so many clients all over the world, I actually just listen. That's one of the biggest things that I do is I just listen. And I'm always listening. So hopefully this is going to be some help. If you keep repeating something that you believe you are into the negative, you will become that. So if you're the kind of person, well, that just happens to me all the time. Oh, I'm just so unlucky. You start believing your own hype. And that's the power of the linguistics and what we start creating. I used to always say, well, I'm just useless at this, and I'm just useless at this, and I'm not good at this. Oh, I'm just always going to be this. Oh, I'm always going to be this. That sentence pre-exposes something that you're always going to be, but you're not. So if you start breaking down what you believe that you are into the negative to a positive, guess what happens? You start actually creating who you actually are. So the power of actually, if you wanted to, for anyone that's listening right now, you wanted to go through and say, well, actually, this radio host, Cuddy Cudworth, whoever he is, has just said, figure out what your identity is. In fact, and that's a powerful thing. And write down, I am a father or a mother. That's fact. That's truth. I am a sister, mother. Write down what you are. Write down what you think about yourself. I am a caring person. I am friendly. I am conscientious. I have integrity. Now, if you start using yourself in positive only and look at what you've written down, it could be 1 page, it could be 4 lines, and start looking at what you are. And this is a really powerful thing to do. And I've done this so many times with my clients and say, so are you what you've just written down? All these positive? Well, yes. Okay. Do you realize how many times you repeat to yourself, well, oh, I am just always going to be depressed, or I am always just this? Well, yeah, I do say that a lot. But that's not something that you have. And I always very clear with so many people that I work with. And when I go into business and jobs, a lot of people use the word, I have anxiety or I have depression. Actually, you don't have it. We are creating it. We're creating it by the way that we think. And today's guest, I had this chat with today's guest, who I'm going to be bringing in very, very shortly, is to decipher the difference between depression of what a lot of people can have and what we start creating to an actual different depression, which is into the mental illness, because there is a distinguish and there is a complete change with it. So that's something that we're going to be discussing today with today's guest, coming up in just a few minutes' time. However, for anyone who's listening, just write down positive statements only. I am, and write down the things, in fact, of which you are, that you know full well about yourself, and have that lovely little list right in front of you. And as you look from that list, just be thinking, okay, that's what I am. That's what I can control, first of all. That is what I can control. That's who I am. That's what I can control. Once you realize that you're starting to think about what other people think about you, you're relinquishing control. You're putting the power of your emotions and your feelings into somebody else's hands. And that's never going to work well. That's why it always brings back to I and who you are. Use that little list so that if you're the kind of person that's an overthinker and really does get caught up in what other people think of you, write it down what you are. And remember that once you start thinking about what other people, and this is the power of thought, of which we're going to be discussing today, once you start realizing that's what other people think of me is not my problem. Because bear in mind, a lot of people will make decisions on you on how they're feeling. If they're having a bad day, they might be going around one of those days thinking, oh, that person's horrible, that person's horrible, that person's horrible. And they're going to make that presupposition. They're going to make that decision on you. That's not who you are. But we become so susceptible to the words that people around us use. And I've been working with some clients, some fabulous people recently that said, oh, my somebody at work keeps saying you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. And then we start believing that hype. So and we always ask that person, well, are you stupid? Well, no. Okay, so if you're not, why are we constantly, well, they might know something that I don't. I'm pretty much sure you probably know yourself so much better than anybody else. And that's a really powerful tool of taking back control of the thoughts and the minds and the concepts that we have. So I wanted to just start the show with that little helpful hint there for anyone that's listening right now thinking, do you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to write down, your name, I am this, and this. Positive statements only. and start reminding yourself that, because that's what I had to do many, many, many times. Because I used to be a chronic overthinker, and I used to be the kind of person that would worry about what other people thought about me. And that's a big thing these days, is that we can really. I've just realised that Cena, the name's spelt wrong. I'm looking at the name going by, and I sent the name wrong. Change the name, Cena. Change the name. I'm just looking at the band that's going down the banner. It's RHONA, Rohna Morrison. Thank you so much, Cena, because I know Rona's in the green room. So we have got a massive subject to talk about today. A massive subject. I'm extremely excited to be able to talk about this, because I've had those conversations, especially when it comes to about the doctors and antidepressants, and why should some people get antidepressants? Why do other people not need antidepressants? And we're going to be able to briefly touch. Thank you so much. Much appreciated, Cena. So today's subject is mental health and mental illness are not the same. And there is only one person I know that can talk about this. No, there's lots of people that we can talk about this, but today's guest is Rohna Morrison. And I'm not going to do the big introduction for Rohna, because I'm going to let Rohna pretty much run the show. Rohna's probably in the green room now. No, that's not how it's going to work. But we're going to have this fantastic conversation with today's guest, who has worked in the criminal units of the psychiatric wards. And she is an retired NHS forensic psychiatrist. And she's got so many stories to tell. But we're going to be talking about the distinction between mental health and mental illness and depression, how depression can affect us. And we've had this conversation, but I'm just going to bring her in because I'm so excited to get her in. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there watching, let's have a massive round of applause. Go wild, go crazy, stamp your feet. You're probably not going to do that. But it's Rohna Morrison, everybody. Give Rohna a massive round of applause. How are you, Rohna?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, first of all. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome.
And I've just realised it says there, Dr. Rohna Morrison. I've been calling you Rohna Morrison because of the conversations that we have been, but absolutely, Dr. Rohna Morrison. And Veronica, welcome back. We've already got a listener for you, Doctor. Veronica's from Edinburgh, believe it or not. She's from Portobello.
Not too far away.
Not too far away at all. So, first of all, Doctor, how would you like to be? Because I didn't realize it was Doctor. Now I've just realized it's Doctor. How would you like to refer to you for the rest of the show? Rohna, just checking. Perfect. So, Rohna, tell everybody what you used to do before you retired.
So, I qualified as a medical doctor. So that's the same as a GP or a paediatrician, a surgeon. We all do the same basic training, junior doctor, delivering babies, helping in operations, all that. But then you subspecialise, and I specialised in psychiatry because I was interested in mental illness. And then I subspecialised later on in forensic psychiatry. It might be useful to explain what that is, because sometimes people think forensic, dead bodies, autopsy, scene of crime. And trying to assess a corpse on a couch really doesn't sum up what I did at all. Forensic is in relation to the courts and the police and crime. And so I dealt with people who were mentally ill, and as a result of their mental illness, sometimes people offend because they don't realise what's going on in their head is real. So it's a tiny proportion of people with mental health problems, mental illness, who actually offend, but it's really important to find them and treat them for their own benefit and for the safety of the public. I also worked in expert opinions for the court for murderers, rapists, that sort of thing, and worked in prison psychiatry and in hospitals and secure units. But my team was the community forensic team, so people coming out of secure units who needed very close monitoring. That's who we looked after. Long answer, sorry.
No, by the way, keep the long answers going, because we've got the whole the next 45 minutes is dedicated to you, because the conversations that we had before were fantastic. And I've always called my podcasts and the radio show Chatter About the Chatter, the conversations we have with ourselves, because I wanted to make sure the distinction, because most of the clients that I work with always come to me and say, oh, but I've always got these conversations, overthinking. I'm having these conversations. I think I've had a conversation with my wife. I've not had a conversation with my wife. It's what's going on up here. And they get to me and they say, oh, I just think what's wrong? I said, no, there's nothing wrong. It's just your monkey mind. However, we had this conversation before the show, which is what we want to, the conversations we have with ourselves is completely different, and that's not a mental illness. That's just our thought process, the conversations we have with ourselves. But a lot of people don't know how to depict the truth. So mental health and having a mental health challenge or being mentally healthy by being aware of it is completely different to mental illness. And how do we define that? You as a doctor, Rohna, how do you define the difference between illness, mental illness, and mental health?
So I gave you a kind of slightly rude example earlier. If you go to the GP and you say, and they're a medical doctor with the same training as me, if you say, I've smoked 60 a day, I'm coughing up blood, and I've lost 3 stones in weight in a month, they don't go, drop your trousers, I'll examine your genitals, do they? They recognise that pattern of symptoms and say, they're thinking, I recognise that pattern of symptoms, it's possibly a lung tumour, I'm going to get a chest x-ray, a sample of their spit, etc. And I'm trained the same way. So psychiatrists as medical doctors, we're looking for patterns of symptoms. The problem is that a lot of symptoms can occur day to day. Sometimes we don't sleep well, or sometimes we are off our food, or sometimes our concentration's a bit poor. It's only when these symptoms are persistent and come in a pattern, along with low mood and sleep and appetite, concentration, energy, libido, all sorts of things being affected, when people start to think maybe this is a bit more than just having a bad day. It's persistent over a period of time. It might be so severe that people stop washing, they stop eating, they stop socializing, they plummet in the results at uni, that sort of thing. So there's a recognized pattern of symptoms, but then there's the severity and the persistence of them that will differentiate symptoms, where people will hear voices or have completely false beliefs, which we call delusions, which are very negative. In depression, they'll be consistent with the mood, so they'll be very negative, like the world's going to end tomorrow and it's my fault. You know, something as severe as that. Or they think, I need to protect my family, the world's coming to an end, I need to kill my family. I mean, that's really extreme. That's not somebody feeling a bit stressed in reaction to relationship problems or, having lost their job or financial worries. So there's a spectrum. But at one end, it definitely becomes a mental illness which needs treatment, often with medication, as well as all the other talking and supportive holistic therapies that are required.
Yes. So, far end of the spectrum, hearing voices. Let's use the example of, I hear voices coming through the smoke alarms and it's everybody talking about me.
Yep.
That's one end of the spectrum. I had a conversation with myself about this other person. I thought I'd spoken to my wife. I hadn't, because I just had the conversation in my head. Is mental health. That's low side of the spectrum, which is not mental illness. Now, I want you to use the analogy of the Mars bar, because that was a phenomenal analogy. So explain somebody with a mental illness and hearing voices and believing they are something. I loved your analogy in the pre.
This sounds flippant and it's not meant to be, but it's to make the point. There's a thing called a delusion, which is a false belief which you hold 100% despite evidence to the contrary. It might be really bizarre, but if someone is really unwell, a delusion will be fixed. And it's not something you can talk your way out of. You have to actually treat it with medication. Now, the example I gave Cuddy earlier when we were speaking was a silly one I gave to students to make the point, because people will act and consistently with their beliefs. So if someone said, doctor, I'm a Mars bar, again, silly example, obviously. But if you said you were a Mars bar and I thought, oh, that's quite unusual, I'll admit them to the ward. If I put them in the bed next to the radiator, the ill person would not sleep in that bed because they would believe that I was trying to kill them by melting them during the night. Now, I know it's a really silly example, a good one, but it's to make the point. People's behaviour is consistent with it, and it's way off normal.
So now that's a negative belief that they are holding on to that would be irrational.
Yes.
So we never spoke about this before, so this is a new one. What about having a belief about yourself that I'm going to be Jesus and I'm going to help people with that notion? Would that be classed as a delusion or a positive? Because you could say, well, I'm going to take on the attributes of Jesus and I'm going to be helpful and I'm going to be nice.
So if you use a religious one, that's quite contentious because it's not straightforward. If someone's depressed, if we were sticking with depression, that wouldn't be a delusion you'd get in depression, because it's a positive rather than a negative belief.
Yeah.
If you're really depressed, it would have a negative content. However, if you believe something religious, I may be an atheist, I may be a Jehovah's Witness, I may be a Buddhist. It's not for me as a doctor to judge whether someone's religious beliefs are true, or they're illness-based or whatever. Well, within reason. What we would do when someone has a religious delusion, in our view, it seems a bit unusual. What we have to do is check it out with their friends and family or anyone else from their religious background to check that even for them it's out of the normal. So if it's culturally consistent, for example, someone from a third world country might be admitted to hospital here believing that they've been possessed by the devil.
Yeah.
But actually, in their culture, it might be that people express physical illness as being possessed by devils. And so we need to check it out culturally. And if it's a shared belief with a group of people, it's not illness. So we do check. It's not like someone just deigning, to just say, I believe you're ill. And, so it's not like that. But it's the situation with Jesus example is not as straightforward. But again, if people believe that they have special powers to bless people and heal them from cancer, and they're barging into A&E departments and laying hands on complete strangers when they've never done that before, then if you were to assess that person, that wouldn't be an isolated symptom. There'd be other symptoms. As we said, the pattern of symptoms would be present, and it would be that collection of symptoms which would lead us to a diagnosis or not.
Yeah. Okay, because I read a fantastic book, because I'm an avid reader of books, is The Power of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I think it's Dr. Bruce Lipton, actually. Seeing as we're dropping the DR bomb, the power of belief of how we can heal ourselves with the power of belief of things, which is completely different. Again, making that distinguish things is between mental illness and mental health, because there is a power of positive belief of which does help. But we're not going to really diverge into that, because we had so many great conversations before, and I wanted to really open up those things. So with the years of experience that you've had, and we touched on this, it was about, and I always mention this, is that I've had some of my clients that I've worked with, and they're on antidepressants, and I'm like, I'm not in a position to get you off antidepressants. You have to go and see your doctor about that. However, why is it you're on? Oh, because I'm an overthinker, and nothing else. I'm an overthinker. And I always find that fascinating, is why a doctor would prescribe just for overthinking an antidepressant. And I know we touched on that before, so just your thoughts before we go on to the fabulous work that you've done for years and things like that as well, Dr. Rohna.
So antidepressants, I think they are misused, they're overused. And I'm not trying to defend doctors.
No.
However, I think in severe depression, there's a lot of evidence that antidepressants do have a role to play, because there's a chemical imbalance in the brain which they can positively impact, and that can help people. They still need to do all the other positive self-talk and all the other aspects of life that give you quality of life and mental well-being, but medication has a part to play. But antidepressants have different side effects, and some of the side effects can be quite helpful in that some of them can be sedating. And if someone is not sleeping, as that's one of their symptoms, and they're absolutely shattered and they feel terrible because they just can't sleep, sometimes a sedative antidepressant can be helpful. Sometimes people have marked anxiety as a symptom of the depression, and this sort of anxiolytic sedative effect of the antidepressant, they're not all like that, but some, if you choose the right one, can impact that positively. Now, if you want someone to work with someone like yourself, Cuddy, they need to be able to sit in the room and have enough confidence to leave the house, perhaps to come and see you or whatever. And sometimes medication can take the edge off things, allowing people to take the next steps to deal with what the issues are. So there are reasons why people are on them. Also, some antidepressants have been shown to be very good at treating anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder and panic disorder. So people might say, I'm on an antidepressant and I don't feel depressed. But the overthinkers, for example, might be someone with an anxiety disorder who tends to ruminate about lots of things and become anxious. So something that modifies that again might make them feel better and more amenable to other treatment interventions. So it's not a straightforward question or answer, obviously.
Yeah, no, I just honestly, I like to have that conversation with someone who is a lot smarter than me. So
Maybe
I
you need to get another guest then, Cuddy.
That's a lovely answer, Rohna, but not true at all. So because I didn't know the difference between this, because you were very clear, said, no, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist. So what's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
I think there's quite a lot of overlap, first and foremost, but the things that distinguish us are that psychologists have often trained very specifically in thinking and behaviours, that sort of thing. So their treatments will often focus on thought processes and changing behaviours. Now, psychiatrists will do quite a bit of that as well. However, because we are trained as medical doctors, obviously our training tends to be a lot broader. So we need to pick up, you might get someone comes along with anxiety, but actually when we take a history as a medical doctor, we might diagnose an overactive thyroid. And actually they don't need Cuddy or Rohna. What they actually need is a GP, and they need to get treatment for their overactive thyroid, which can cause racing heartbeat and feeling anxious. So we need to rule out physical disorders, which we're trained to do. As a medical doctor, we're also qualified in diagnosis and treatment, so we can actually prescribe medication. So we tend to, if the main distinguishing thing is that we probably have an expertise at the more severe end of mental illness, where medication has definitely got a role to play as part of the treatment plan. And we're the ones that can prescribe that. So I suppose that's a distinguishing factor. And there's a lot of crossover. We all deal with people with mental health issues, when they're mental illness, and so we'll all be dealing with that, and we'll work alongside each other, adding our different elements of expertise.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know you mentioned when you were working with severe clients, you said there was always two psychiatrists on hand for two opposing ideas. Is that correct?
Well, it was specifically for in the court system. If someone, murder's the best example. If someone's charged with murder, and they go up to court and they say, "Would you like to plead guilty or not guilty?" If you plead guilty, there's no trial because you're saying I did it. And in murder, if you say you're guilty of murder, you get a life sentence. There's no discretion. You just get a life sentence. So it's really, really important that before anyone pleads to a charge of murder, that they're seen by two psychiatrists routinely. And that's to make sure that they understand the nature of the charge and the consequences of any plea they make. But it's also the early opportunity to pick up the very rare case when someone's acutely unwell. Because it doesn't mean you're not convicted, and it doesn't mean you don't have to be somewhere secure for public safety. But if you're mentally ill, to be guilty of murder, you need to have intent to kill, and you need to be of sound mind to do that. So if someone murders because of they're psychotic and they believe that the end of the world's going to happen, and they have to save the world by killing the devil, and the devil's the man in the sweetie shop, something really quite extreme, then it's really important that they...
I love that analogy though. The man in the sweetie shop.
But it is random, so that's why it's so bizarre, but it happens so rarely. But it's important that we would pick that up and we would highlight it to the court. It is severe mental illness would be a defence in law, and they would still have to be somewhere, say, locked up and for treatment, but they'd be in the right place. They wouldn't be in a prison. They'd be in somewhere like the State Hospital at Carstairs or something like that.
Yes. So you are based out of Edinburgh?
No, I'm in Central Scotland.
Central. Oh, my apologies. Although you were very quick to change that to point that one out. Very.
I didn't say a specific place because I have a stalker, Cuddy. So I'm just Central Scotland's fine.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine because I totally understand. Right. So the other thing I was going to ask you about is how many years did you work in that profession?
Over 30.
Wow, 30 years. So you will have some stories to tell.
I have a few. You
have a few stories. So we've got plenty of time, and you've got a phenomenal book out. And I say a phenomenal book because I read a few of the pages because it was very good and I really liked it, and I can't wait to get into it more because I know it's available on pre-order, but I checked it out. Tell us a little bit about your book and some of the stories that you can share with us today.
So my book's called I Don't Talk to Dead Bodies. Going back
Perfect.
to it's not CSI, and you always had to explain, it's nothing to do with dead bodies. So it starts by just being called that. I Don't Talk to Dead Bodies, The Curious Encounters of a Forensic Psychiatrist. So it's a memoir, mostly work related, but obviously some particular elements of my own past that are relevant to, it's not everybody can work with someone who's raped a granny or murdered a child or whatever. And you have to be non-judgmental. You have to go in and see the human being behind the headline. And my non-judgmental bit, if you like, comes from I'm the youngest of three, and my middle sister, when she was born, in old terminology, because this is what my parents were told, she was deaf, dumb, blind, mentally and physically handicapped. These are not PC things now, but that's what they were told. And so all of my life, until my sister sadly passed away, was spent visiting my sister in hospital. She was in care, and she never knew I was there. We never got to speak, but I was closer to her than anyone else. And I didn't judge her. I just valued her for who she was. And I think that's really fundamental to the work I ended up doing, because I didn't judge people. I thought there's a human being here. Something's happened. I need to try and understand it, tease it apart, and try and make them the best version of themselves. So things like that in the book are that my own personal story that relates to how I ended up, where I was. But the purpose of the book, I guess, is that very thing about, the human beings behind the headlines. Yes, I've got some bizarre and weird stories, things that happened to me, but the purpose was to say, behind that, there was a human being that was ill, and actually my role was to try and help them. So the stories in the book, I've not mentioned any names or anything like that.
No.
It was about, and it's not like full case histories, it's not in depth, it's not like that at all. It's kind of, if you like, slightly amusing or scary hooks to get you to listen, but then hopefully you hear the actual message, which is about making people more aware. So raising mental health awareness and also destigmatizing mental illness. So that's kind of the background to it. I mean, within the book, I do have a stalker. So there's a story about how I discovered I had a stalker. I was giving a lecture in my children's old school, and it was interrupted by a walkie-talkie planted underneath the grand piano. And I found about 200 videos on YouTube about me made by them. So I've been to court and all that. I had someone turn up dressed as Superman in the middle of the night, which was a bit unusual. What else?
Stop the book. Hold on a second. So this shows the caliber of person that you are and how you handle life, Rohna. Very nonchalantly, I am a stalker. There's 200 videos on YouTube about me. Would freak most people out.
It did, to be fair, it freaks me out a bit as well. So there's a line. I was trying to work with people, who had mental health problems, etc. But if someone crossed the line, if someone told me they were going to shoot somebody and they had a named victim, or one of the patients who were in his house and he wanted to kill his sister, but thought my nurse had been replaced by his sister, we had to get out and I had to get the police and come back. It was a bit of a, we didn't come here to upset you. That wasn't our intention. We're going to leave. The subtext was like Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back very shortly with some police because we need to keep everybody safe. But, you had to be in the moment, try to keep yourself safe. And how can we keep everybody else safe? But so someone interrupting my lecture or putting things on YouTube that were, concerning, I went to the police that day and, prosecuted them. I mean, that's what anyone would do, I guess, isn't it? But it wasn't.
Honestly, that's what anybody would do. I would freak out. Absolutely.
Well, I was concerned. let's be honest. But work were very good. Again, put alarm systems in overnight and gave me a personal alarm and all that. So people were very supportive.
What I don't know. You mentioned your sister. But what genuinely sent you on that path? Because you said you started out like a normal doctor, normal procedures going through GP, birthing, all those kind of things. What was the what was the journey into the profession that you went? Because I think how you it sounds amazing how in a world there is a lot of judgment at the moment. Let's be honest. I mean, there's probably always been a lot of judgment from a lot of people, and I'll admit I've been quite judgmental in the past, and I know I have. I know I was one of those people that was judgmental about things in the past, and that came from a place of ignorance. I know that comes from a place of ignorance and not knowing things. But for the journey that you went through, Rohna, what was the turning point that you got into the psychiatrist in the forensic dealing with those things? What was the actual journey that thought, do you know what, this is where I'm going to go?
Yeah, a slightly odd journey as usual. I was visiting my sister every week. Really liked when it wasn't my turn to hold her, and sort of give her physical stimulation, jumping up and down. It wasn't my turn. My mum or dad or my sister. I would go and talk to the other patients with learning difficulties, and I really liked if I could make them smile, whatever. And I thought, I'll go to the careers advisor at high school and say, I want to do something with learning disability. I will like working with that patient group. And they said, psychology, psychiatry, that sort of thing. And I said, okay, not daunted by this sort of 13 or so years they told me I'd have to train for, I decided to go for medicine and psychiatry. So I went into medicine with the intention of doing psychiatry of learning disability. That was my intention. The bizarre thing in first year at secondary school, we got asked to do an essay called My Secret Garden. Everybody wrote about trees that had chocolate buttons and money on them and things like that. I wrote about the brain with pathways and ideas blooming, and there was obviously something. There was a sign. And then when I passed all my medical exams and was junior doctor, then I started in psychiatry. So that was the plan. I got 3 years into psychiatry and I passed my membership exam, and I went to apply for the learning disability, specialist training. There were 2 jobs. They'd been taken 6 months before, and that career path was closed. So they advertised forensic psychiatry, and I thought, what's that? Dead bodies? They sent me off to the state hospital at Carstairs for a week just to find out what it was about, and it was fascinating. I'm a people person. I'm interested in people, and I met a lot of interesting people. So I thought, this is for me. I applied, and the rest is history.
Wow. So, beautiful story, by the way, Rohna. A phenomenal story. How did you separate yourself from the judgment of the heinous crimes that some of your clients had done or were going to do? How do you, is honestly Veronica is Southside, by the way, and she's just written a comment. Hi, Rohna. And she's also saying, fascinating, Rohna. So thankful for the work you do. Absolutely, we're thankful for the work that you've done.
Thanks.
So how did you disassociate?
I think it's important to have a work-life balance and have interests and whatnot. Wife and mother duties, taking that. But I suppose latterly, more recently, I've got into my art. I used to study art at school, did my higher art, and I got accepted by the Glasgow School of Art, but I decided to do medicine instead. So I've gone back to art and a particular thing called Pointillism. And it's basically making pictures with thousands and thousands of dots, just going dot, 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 one at a time. Sounds a bit bizarre, but actually it just empties the mind. You're in a zone and you shut your mind off to other things, and it just relaxes me. So everybody finds a different thing. So I've found that for me.
That was that we talked about that because I asked you about meditation, because we were talking about that obviously a lot of my knowledge comes from books that I've read and those kind of things, and I'm like, these things resonated with me, and I know they don't always resonate with absolutely everybody. And I was saying that depression comes from thinking about something in the past. Depression is an emotion, and I know it's not always that clear cut. We talked about that before, Rohna. It's not always that clear cut that depression is the label that we give it, and I come from a premise it's an emotion. We can change the way that we think, change your thoughts, change your life, obviously, but it's not always that simple. And I get that it's not always that simple. So Eckhart Tolle was a big believer in don't think about the past. It's in the past. Let it go. It's not always that simple. And anxiety will come from something that we're trying to control in the future that we can't. And we're the ones that really do master that. Over practice, we're like, actually, I don't need to think about that. Don't need to think about that. And you'll find that these challenges that we create do often go away. But when you were doing the job that you did, and it's great that you've disassociated now. I was saying meditation was my thing. And once you told me, and by the way, I checked your website out, and anybody check out the website because your pictures are amazing. The pointillism is you literally described meditation, because you said, no, I've never done meditation. It's never really been my thing. But what you talked about, I'm like, that's meditation. It doesn't matter what it is. You are so focused on the present moment, which would be the 1,001 dots. That's meditation. What you did, and I know you kept saying, look at the tiger cubs, because you were really happy with the tiger cubs. I'm like, oh, I really like that. I like the orangutan one. Obviously, I'm going to like the monkey one. But I was like, they're really cool. So please, if anyone's listening, check out. What is your website called again?
It's www.rohnamorrison.com.
Couldn't
and
be
it's
in
spelling under my name because one of them's still wrong along the bottom.
Is it? So Rohna Morrison Leah, mental health and mental illness are not the same thing.
No, it's been corrected now. It's been apologies.
No, it's okay. It's fine. See, they'll be going through it like, no. But no, please check out the website and stuff like that. Now, how you disassociate now? Brilliant, fantastic. How did you, when you were doing the job and you were in the job, how did you disassociate from the person?
The judgment.
Or how did you deal with the job? What was it that you? Because I know when I spoke to you, you are such a nice, helpful person. You can just tell that there's nothing but you're a pure light, Rohna, in all fairness. I would say you're a pure light. How did you in that moment not judge when you were on the job?
Well, what I always said to patients, because they had a negative opinion of themselves when they got better, if they'd committed a serious crime when unwell, they were obviously troubled greatly by that. And what I always said is sometimes mental illness makes good people do bad things, but the behavior doesn't define you. It's something that happened in the past and you can learn from it. You can't change it, but the best thing you can do, if you've harmed somebody's family member, for example, you can't change that. However, you can show them that you realize now that you have an illness and that you have to manage that illness to keep everybody safe in the future. And that's something good that's come from something bad. You've actually, you've got some insight now, you realize, and you're able to do the right thing. So my job was to try and see the person, as I said, behind the story, because the story doesn't define them. It's a part of something that's happened in their past, but they can't change it. They can change the future. They can make the right decisions to stay on medication, to stay in treatment, to report when they're feeling unwell, all that. And so it was quite a kind of practical way of looking at it, I guess. Me judging them is not going to be helpful to anyone. Me treating their illness and will make them feel better and will keep the public safe. And me monitoring them, and my team monitoring them, and taking action if there's any change that puts people at risk. That's what can make a difference. So focusing on, as I'm sure you do, Cuddy, in your work, is you focus on the things that you can deal with.
Yeah,
and you don't focus on or dwell on the things that are out with your control. You can't change what's happened, but you can learn from it. So that, I guess that's how I dealt with it. Just at a very practical level. It's not helpful to judge, and it doesn't define the person.
No, it's absolutely fantastic, and the world is getting more and more judgmental and dissatisfied with things, and that does come from the place of comparison sometimes and things like that. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. So share one of the stories that you like. I'm sure that whenever you go to a party or to a gathering and you say, oh, this is what I used to do, I'm sure there's some people that are like, right, I need to speak to you for 17 hours. I need to find out. In a world of where, and I'm going to be very honest, if you were to look at my Netflix account, you'd be like, could be a serial killer. Because I watch all the documentaries, because I'm fascinated about the mind. And we talked about split personality and the premise of how split personalities happen. Because I want us to be friends for a long time, Ron. I want to be able to call you and say, right, I've got a question about this. And you'll be like, oh my God, I might be a new stalker, Ron. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, because you're going to be like, oh God, he's calling me again. He just wants to pick my brain about all these things. So, and I only jest about the stalker, by the way, Ron. I think that's amazing how you've handled you handled that. However, what's the one case that you were like, at any point you'd be like, I can't believe I'm in the middle of this. There must be one case that you'd be like, wow, this happens in a world that just really touched parts that you thought, well, that's a shocker.
Well, I don't know if it quite answers your question, but when I retired, I got a set of cupcakes, and most cupcakes, have flowers, roses, and things on them. I had handcuffs and a dagger, machetes, and I had Diet Iron Brew and a chunky Kit Kat. That was my standard lunch in the car. But there was one cupcake with male genitals on it, which is not your standard retirement cake, I guess. And that was relating to an incident when I was interviewing someone who'd been charged with a sex offence, and I had to take a sexual history. And obviously, it's not everybody's job where you have to ask about masturbation and fantasies and stuff, but it was part of mine. And the person stood up and dropped their trousers in the middle of the interview, and the rest is history. But it was someone who was ill, who had been missed, and we were able to get them into treatment, and they were a lovely person from a lovely family. And I think it just makes the point. Yes, I was a victim when they were charged, because you do have to have boundaries, and there are consequences to actions, but they also came into treatment and did really well. So it was just a reminder of.
If you don't mind me asking, do you still know him?
Yes.
Wow. Do you? I'm just intrigued. I'm like, how do you look that person in the eye again and go, "Hey, how are you? You're right." Yeah, I remember. I saw it
because someone was ill, and it was it came to light through a difficult situation, and they didn't ask to be ill, and it could happen to you or I. I hope that if I ever get ill like that, somebody treats me with respect as well.
Rohna, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So I've got a feeling that all your cupcakes refer to your cases that you dealt with.
Yes.
Fascinating. So now I'm thinking you were dealing with right. I need to go further into the book, because you mentioned the machete, you remembered handcuffs. So there's more stories to be told. So I went to the dark side. I went to find out what one of those stories. Tell us. And that, by the way, did start out. Tell us a positive story of something that you've done that made that massive change in someone's life. Tell us one of those stories that's from the book or from your memories, because it sounds like you've not only probably got one book, you've got about 2 or 3 books you could possibly write with the things that you know, Rohna.
I think the most important stories are the ones where, despite illness, people got on, were resilient, and lived their lives. People who ended up going to college, or had a family, or invited us to their wedding, or we've had all of these things, and that's the real success, is when people don't become the illness, they don't become defined by it. They might struggle with it and have to have a lot of support, but actually the people who we saw, and the privilege is, I think most doctors see people for short-term episodes of treatment, and then they're gone. And in forensic, we tended to have people on our caseloads for years and years and years, because the serious illnesses have a tendency to recur. And so we had to monitor very closely for a long time to make sure that if this particular person got unwell, they didn't do something dangerous. So that's why they were kept in treatment. So we had the luxury of seeing people through a life cycle, through birth, death, marriages, and all the rest. And that was a real privilege. And so you did see people actually come full circle and do really well. And that was so there was a lot of good stories in there.
Absolutely fantastic. Can I circle back to something?
Okay.
Because you only briefly touched on it, Rohna. Man in the Superman outfit. And the only reason I'm asking is I'm obsessed with Superman. So I'm like, right, we need to talk about the man in the Superman outfit. What was that?
I was a junior doctor on call, and it was just a one-off contact. And the purpose of telling the story was actually, one of the things you get told is sit nearest the door, so that if there's any risk that you can get out quickly. And if you're seeing a new person, see them two staff, so that, again, for risk management purposes. And it was during the night. There were no extra staff. The ward was busy, and I saw someone of my own. They took their jacket off, bare chest, tie, underpants over trousers, and you're thinking, this is not normal. There's something not quite right here. And then they looked at me and said, they'll never know, we've done it before. And I thought, oh my goodness, it felt, they were staring at me. I thought, am I going to get raped in the middle of the night? I'm here myself. And it was about how I got out of the situation safely. But I hadn't expected to meet Superman, was this sort of flippant comment, because they had their pants over their trousers.
Has it frozen there?
Oh, you've frozen on my screen.
Is that my internet or is that Rona's? Hang on a second. Hang on. It must be Rohna. Rohna, are you there?
I am. Yeah.
Wow. I freaked out because I'm like, I've got another 10 minutes. I can't fill for 10 minutes, Rohna. I'm like, I need another 5 minutes of Rohna before we go any further. Because we talked about with what I do as a mind management coach, I help people manage their thoughts, their mind, their emotions, and I love what I do. And I've been told by a lot of my clients that they've been in therapy before with different kind of therapists, and they've worked they've been with counseling, and they just don't feel like they're getting moved forward. And I've always said, as a mind management coach, we find the solutions to move you forward. That's my job, is for anybody that's thinking, well, I've tried this and I've tried this and I've still got those feelings of low self-worth, no purpose, and I get people moving forward. And I've always used perspective and key decisions that people have used in their life that really do haunt them, and things. But that's different from mental illness once again. And I always want to make sure that's really clear, that is different than mental illness. And that's why it's been absolutely fantastic having you on, Rohna. And I mean that, Rohna. I could listen to your conversations, your stories, as I'm sure many, many people do. So tell us where the book is available.
The book's not out yet, but it's available on pre-order on Amazon, and it's $12.99. And as I said, it's called I Don't Talk to Dead Bodies, The Curious Encounters of a Forensic Psychiatrist.
And it's on pre-order. When's it going to be out?
Hopefully end of July.
Fantastic. So it's just around the corner. A fantastic thing. Now, I really want you to talk about, because I think it's a big part as well, Veronica's saying, by giving them back a real life understanding, they need to understand their own mind and emotions. Thank goodness for your dedication. That's for you, Rohna. That is for you. I've met a lot of people, especially from the realms that we have, and when I met you first, Rohna, I was like, oh, no, that's a genuine, heartful person. Just you honestly, you exude this light that when you step into a room, Rohna, and it's absolutely amazing. And I mean that when I met you on Tuesday, and I'd heard about you previously as well. So absolutely amazing. But talk to me about your artwork as well. I want to give you all the time, because your artwork is amazing. And Pointillism, you can even touch on that, because I can tell you now, it's a form of meditation. But how do you make because it's the shading that you do, and once you really look closely into your artwork, you can see that is that lighter dots. How does it work? Because your pictures that you've done are amazing. And please, for anyone, check out the website. It's different artwork that I've never seen before. It's very clean, it's very simple, but then once you really look into the detail, it's amazing. So tell me more about the Pointillism, how you found it, how you got into it, and how you do what you do with the pictures.
Well, I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember painting by numbers. Do you remember the oil paintings? The picture would come and it would all these tiny little shapes with numbers, and you had to put the right colour correspond to the number. You know, you coloured each wee bit. And then when you look back, you could see the whole thing come to life. So it's almost a bit like that in terms of when I draw the tiger cub we mentioned earlier. So when I draw the tiger cub, it's got stripes on it and things. So I do a pencil drawing, no shading, just if there's a dark bit or a stripe, I'll draw the lines in where the stripes are, etc. Or if there's a shadow, I'll put a line in there. So it's almost like making my own, painting my numbers. And once I've drawn the picture with all the wee boxes, and then I refer to the photograph that I'm working from, I'll go, right, that's it, that shape there's the really dark bit, that's the shadow, or it's a stripe or whatever. And so it's the same pens, but I just do thousands of dots at that bit. So, and they're closer together, so it gets darker and darker and darker. And then for the light bits, it's just judicious use of a few dots. And then you merge them together with slightly more dots. And so you get a smooth thing. And rather than using lines for the outline, you might do lots of dots so it looks like wee hairs rather than, sort of thing. So it's literally sitting, once I've drawn the picture, you can zone out because I just know I'm in the dark bit, dot, 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 dot. And so it is, yes, that's my meditation. According to Cuddy, that's my medication. So meditation or medication, maybe I'm needing. So that's the pointillism. I do watercolor as well, but it's all detailed. I'm quite a detailed person, so yeah. So people just send me their photographs, and then I'll do. It's usually pet portraits and animals and sort of landscape type things with lots of detail in it. Today I'm doing New York town hall, which, let me tell you, is very detailed. I'm painting it, and it's but it's a wedding venue, so somebody wanted it as a gift. So
that's absolutely amazing. And for anyone that does check it out, Veronica, check out the orangutan. I'm just saying, check out the orangutan because it's a monkey. So I went straight to the orangutan, but your artwork's amazing, Rohna.
Thank you.
And with the life that you've had, and I know you talked about some of the other challenges that you had when you retired and things like that, and we're not going to touch on that, but for what you've done for others, Rohna, and for how you just are as a person and a human being right now, you deserve everything that you get. The happiness that you're creating is absolutely fantastic, Rohna, and I mean that. It's been a pleasure, and I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So the book is available on pre-order on Amazon. Check out the website, Rohna Morrison, and the book is I Don't Talk to Dead People. Is that correct?
I Don't Talk to Dead Bodies.
Dead Bodies. That was the one. I had it written down as well. Look, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I can't wait for us to speak again. I hope I get to see you on a Tuesday in the future.
Okay,
if not, absolutely. If not, invite me on a Friday because I would have more and more conversations with you on a daily basis. I genuinely would.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Oh, I've got a private chat question here. Before we say goodbye, use the timer, not the actual timer, please. Right. Okay, not a problem. Thank you very much, Rohna. Bye. Perfect. So we have a few minutes left to talk about. The actual time, I think it says I've got 3.5 minutes left. So 3.5 minutes is absolutely fine. So we've got another show coming up with myself and Graham Nichols next week. I just want to make sure I read the comments there for you as well. Orangutan are my babies. Take a right class. I'm ordering the book and checking the website. I'm actually going to order the book as well because it's fascinating. Sometimes it's nice to read those stories and really get into the mind of other people. So thank you, Veronica. That will be amazing. And I'm going to pre-order that book on Amazon as well. So as always, it's been my pleasure hosting this. I'm going to get some fabulous... Actually, I've got some really cool guests coming up for Monkey Mind Relaxation. So please tune in. Tell your friends about us. It's a pleasure, as always, hosting these radio shows. Myself and Graham... we'll be back with the meaning of life next Thursday. Lots to talk about there. You are more than welcome to join in and ask any questions. That's more that live show that we can help. We can help in the moment. I think I know what we're going to be talking about next week, but I'm not going to share it just yet. But I think we've got some fascinating things that we're going to be able to share and hopefully be able to help and assist. And as always, check out the website, or if you want to learn how you can change your thoughts and change your health, so you can become more mentally healthy by taking back control of your thoughts. There's a fabulous course that I've created. It is on my website. It's called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Mind Management Coaching for Success and More Happiness. If you are a catastrophizer, you have irrational thoughts, you have irrational thinking, negative thoughts, you want to start taking back control of those things that you have in life, absolutely go to the website, monkeymindrelaxation.com. Check it out. I think it's on the first page, but you are more than welcome to get that course and really start working on yourself from the comfort of your own home. It's a powerful thing, especially with the price of petrol these days. Working on stuff from the house is things that we can do. So it's been a pleasure. Veronica, I feel like I've missed you. We've not had those conversations for a while. It's been great having you back, Veronica. And I'm sorry saying Portobello, not Southside. Bless you. So thank you for being a part of the show. And for anybody else that was listening in the background, it's been an absolute pleasure. As always, I am Cuddy Cudworth, the Mind Management Coach. UK's leading. Big love from Cuddy.